saw him heading for town.
He's gone to the train station, Rachel. We're getting a little boy from the orphan asylum in Nova Scotia.
You can't be in earnest.
Mrs. Peter Blewett's bringing him on the 5:30 train. She was going to the orphanage to pick up a girl for her cousin, so we just told her to pick us up a boy.
Well, Marilla, I'll just tell you plain that I think you're doing a mighty foolish thing. You're bringing a strange child into your house, and you don't know a single thing about him. I heard of an orphan girl over in New Brunswick who put strychnine in the well, and the whole family died in fearful agonies.
Well, we're not getting an orphan girl. I wouldn't dream of a girl. We need someone to help work this farm.
It's so wonderful that I'm going to live with you. I've never belonged to anybody. Not really. I feel pretty nearly perfectly happy. I can't feel exactly perfectly happy, though, because, well, what color would you call this?
Well, it's red, ain't it?
Yes, it's red. Now you see why I can't ever be perfectly happy. I cannot imagine that red hair away, but I do my best. I think to myself, now my hair is a glorious black, black as the raven's wing, but all the time I know it's just plain red, and it breaks my heart. It will be my lifelong sorrow. Oh, I must be in a dream. Hello.
Where's the boy?
There wasn't any boy.
There must have been a boy. We sent word to bring a boy.
There was only her.
Well, this is a pretty piece of business.
You don't want me? You don't want me because I'm not a boy. Oh, I might have known nobody really did want me.
I'll just be on my way.
Well, there's no need to cry about it.
Yes, there is need. You would cry too if you were an orphan and you just came to a place that you thought was going to be your home, but then you found out that they didn't want you because you're not a boy. Oh, this is the most tragical thing that ever happened to me.
Well, don't cry anymore. We're not going to turn you out of the doors tonight. We'll investigate this affair tomorrow. What is your name?
Will you please call me Cordelia?
Is that your name?
No, not exactly, but I would love to be called Cordelia. It's such a perfectly elegant name.
I don't know what on earth you mean. If Cordelia isn't your name, what is it?
Anne Shirley, but oh, please do call me Cordelia. It can't matter much to you what you call me if I'm only going to be here a little while, can it? And Anne is such an unromantic name.
Unromantic fiddlesticks. Anne is a good, plain, sensible name, and that's what I'll call you.
Well then, could you please call me Anne spelled with an E?
What difference does it make how it's spelled?
Oh, it makes such a difference. When you hear a name, don't you picture it in your mind? A-N-N looks dreadful, but A-N-N-E looks so much more distinguished. If you'll only call me Anne with an E, I shall try to reconcile myself to not being called Cordelia.
Very well then, Anne with an E. Take off your coat and have some supper.
Well, trips to the station's made me hungry.
Did you ask Mrs. Peter Blewett why she brought a girl?
Never saw her. She left Anne with the stationmaster. He said she didn't bring no boys off that train. Didn't see how she'd be left at the station, no matter where the mistake was.
Well, we'll straighten this out tomorrow. Mrs. Peter's going to the berries. I'll talk to her first thing. You're not eating?
I can't. I'm in the depths of despair. Can you eat when you're in the depths of despair?
I've never been in the depths of despair, so I can't say.
Well, did you ever try to imagine you were in the depths of despair?
No, I didn't.
Then I don't think you can understand what it's like. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. When you try to eat, a lump comes right up in your throat and you can't swallow anything, not even if it was a chocolate caramel. I had one chocolate caramel 2 years ago and it was simply delicious. I've often dreamed that I had a lot of chocolate caramels, but I always wake up right when I'm about to eat them. I hope you're not offended because I can't eat. Everything is extremely nice, but I can't.
Well, I guess she's tired. Best put her to bed, Marilla.
I suppose. I made up the couch in the back room for the boy, but that won't do for her. We'll have to put you in the east gable, I guess. It's plain, but it's clean. Bring your bag.
And sleep well.
Thank you, Mr. Cuthbert.
I suppose you have a nightgown?
Yes, the matron of the asylum made it for me. It's fearfully skimpy, but you can dream just as well in it as a lovely trailing one with frills round the collar.
Well, undress as quick as you can and go to bed. I'll come back in a few minutes for the candle. I darest trust you put it out yourself. You'd likely set the place on fire. Good night.
How can you call it a good night when you know it must be the very worst night I've ever had?
That's a good old bed, nice and firm, and you've a room all to yourself. I expect this is a far better night than most you had back in that orphan asylum. Good night. Peter Blewett will be at the Berries by 9. I'll talk to her direct this time. The child have to be sent back.
Yes, I suppose so.
You suppose so? Don't you know it?
Well, now, it's kind of a pity sending her back when she's so set on staying.
Matthew Cuthbert, you don't mean to say you think we ought to keep her?
Well, no. I suppose not. Not exactly, I suppose. We could hardly be expected to keep her.
I should say not. What good would she be to us?
We might be some good to her.
I believe that child has bewitched you.
Well, now, she's a real interesting little thing. You should have heard her talk coming down from the station.
I don't want an orphan girl. And if I did, she isn't the style I pick. No, she's got to be sent back. Straight away.
Good morning, Miss Cuthbert. Good morning, Mr. Cuthbert. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Don't you feel as if you love the world on a morning like this? I'm not in the depths of despair anymore because I've just been imagining that it was me you really wanted after all and that I was to stay here forever and ever. It was a great comfort while it lasted.
Sit down and eat your breakfast.
I'm pretty hungry this morning. The world doesn't seem such a howling wilderness as it did last night. I'm so glad it's sunshiny, but I like rainy mornings real well, too. All sorts of mornings are interesting, don't you think? But it is easier to be cheerful and bear up under affliction on a sunshiny day.
For pity's sake, hold your tongue. You talk entirely too much for a little girl. Can you wash dishes right?
Pretty well, but I'm better at looking after children. It's a shame you haven't got me here for me to look after.
I don't want any more children than I've got at present. What's to be done with you? I don't know. Matthew's a most ridiculous man.
I think he's lovely. He's so very sympathetic. I felt he was a kindred spirit as soon as I ever saw him.
You're both strange enough if that's what you mean. When you wash the dishes, take plenty of hot water, and be sure you dry them well. After you finish the dishes, we'll go to the Berries and settle what's to be done with you.
I'm not going to think about going back. I'm going to enjoy my breakfast in these trees and, oh look, there's one little early wild rose out. Isn't pink the most bewitching color in the entire world? I love it, but I can't wear it. Red-headed people can't wear pink, not even in imagination. Did you ever know of anybody whose hair was red when she was young, but got to be another color when she grew up?
No, I don't know as I ever did. And I shouldn't think it likely happening in your case either.
Well, there's another hope gone. My life is a perfect graveyard of buried hopes. That's a sentence I read in a book once. I say it to comfort myself whenever I'm disappointed in anything. It's so nice and romantic, don't you think?
Since you're so bent on talking, you might as well talk some purpose. Tell me what you know about yourself, where you were born and such.
Bolingbroke, Nova Scotia. My father was Walter Shirley, and he was a teacher in the high school. My mother was Bertha Shirley. Aren't Walter and Bertha lovely names?
A person's name doesn't matter as long as she behaves herself.
My mother was a teacher, too, but Mrs. Thomas said they were a pair of babies and as poor as church mice. They went to live in a teeny-weeny little yellow house. I never really saw it, but I've imagined it thousands of times. Honeysuckle over the parlor window, lilacs in the...
I don't need your imaginings. Stick to the bald facts.
Mrs. Thomas said I was the homeliest baby she ever saw, nothing but eyes. But my mother thought I was perfectly beautiful. I'm glad she was satisfied with me because she didn't live long, you see. She died of a fever when I was just 3 months old, and my father 4 days after. There was no family to take me in, and nobody wanted me. But finally, Mrs. Thomas took me, even though she had a drunken husband. I lived with them until I was 8. I helped look after their children. There were 4 of them younger than me. Then Mr. Thomas was killed falling under a train, and His mother offered to take Mrs. Thomas and the children, but she didn't want me. Finally, Mrs. Hammond took me since I was handy with children. She had 2 and I came, and afterwards twins 3 times in succession. When Mr. Hammond died, she broke up the housekeeping, divided her children among her relatives, and moved to the States. I had to go to the asylum because nobody would take me. I was there 4 months, and then Mrs. Blewett came. Those are the facts.
Were those women good to you?
Oh, they meant to be, just as good and kind as possible. And when people mean to be good, you don't mind very much when they're not quite always. They had a great deal to worry them, you know. It's very trying to have a drunken husband and to have twins 3 times in succession, but I feel sure they meant to be good to me. I'll wash the dishes now.
Why don't you go outside for a little first? You can do the dishes after. What's the matter?
If I go out there, well, there's no use in my loving Green Gables if I can't stay. I'll do the dishes and we can go.
Why, good morning, Miss Cuthbert. Won't you come on in? Mother's just taking some muffins out of the oven.
Thank you, Diana. Has Mrs. Peter Blewett come yet? Your mother said she'd be stopping by this morning.
Why, yes, she's just arrived. Shall I go get her for you?
Thank you. I'll go in. This is Anne Shirley. This is Diana and her sister Minnie May, Anne.
Diana! What a perfectly lovely name. Diana was a goddess, you know. I'm Anne with an E on the end. It's much more elegant.
Let's go in, Anne.
I thought I heard your voice, Marilla. How good of you to stop by.
Well, I see you got the girl all right. I couldn't waste time waiting for Matthew last night.
The girls might have come, Mrs. Peter. You see, there's been a mistake. We wanted a boy. We told your brother Robert to tell you we wanted a boy.
You don't say. Well, Robert sent her word by his daughter Nancy, and she said you wanted a girl. She's a terrible flighty thing, that Nancy. I can't count the times I've had to chastise her for heedlessness. It's not my fault, Miss Cuthbert.
We should have come to you ourselves on such an important matter, not trusted to a message. But anyhow, the mistake's been made, and the only thing to do now is to set it right. Can we send the child back to the asylum? I suppose they'll take her, won't they?
I suppose so, but, you know, that may not be necessary. All the way back yesterday I was thinking, now why don't I get one of those orphans to come work for me? You know how hard it is to keep good help. I swear the girls I hire don't know what it means to work. Think they've come to eat my food and let the children run wild.
Your children have a lot of energy, Miss Peter.
That's why I've got the serving girls there, to get that energy out of them. Shh. Let me look at you, girl. What was your name again?
Anne Shirley.
That's right. There's not much to you without that coat wrapped around. They practically shoved her at me, said she'd be a good worker, though they seemed a little too eager to get rid of her in my mind. She is wiry, though. Wiry ones are the best.
Do you have any twins, Mrs. Blewett?
What business is that of yours? If I take you, you'll have to be a good girl. Good and smart and respectful. I have 4 boys and a little girl, and you'll earn your keep. There's no mistake about that. You've experienced caring for children, haven't you?
Yes.
Well, then I suppose I might have to take her off your hands, Miss Cuthbert. That sluggard I have now is just about to run off. I saw it in her eyes this morning. Having one like this will save me the trouble of trying to find a new girl every month. If you like, I'll take her right now.
Shh, Minnie May, it's all right. Shh.
Well, I don't know. I didn't say Matthew and I had absolutely decided not to keep her. In fact, Matthew is disposed to have her stay. I oughtn't to decide without consulting him. If we decide not to keep her, we'll send her over to you tomorrow night. Will that suit you, Mrs. Peter?
I suppose it will have to.
Come in, have some tea, Marilla. You too, Anne. There's warm muffins.
Thank you, but I told Matthew I'd be home right away.
I've rarely seen you so solicitous of Matthew, Marilla. Come on, Diana. We don't want to keep Mrs. Peter waiting.
Well, perhaps I'll see you again sometime.
Come on now.
Oh, Miss Cuthbert, would you really let me stay at Green Gables?
It isn't decided yet. Perhaps we'll conclude to let Mrs. Peter Blewett take you after all. She certainly needs you much more than I do.
I'd rather go back to the asylum than live with her. She looks exactly like a gimlet.
A little girl like you should be ashamed of talking so. You hold your tongue and behave as a good girl should.
I'll try to do and be anything you want, if only you'll keep me.
You can practice keeping your thoughts to yourself then, as we go back to Green Gables.
You shall see how strong I can be, Miss Cuthbert. I'll be the model of golden silence. I shall be as quiet as the leaves when the wind stops blowing after a storm. That's a lovely, cool quiet, isn't it? Even the insects seem to be waiting to make sure. That's the last of the dishes, Miss Cuthbert, and I believe they are dried very well. It does make one feel very satisfied to have completed a task down to every detail in just the way it was supposed to be done.
It's time for bed now, Anne.
But I'm still bursting with energy, Miss Cuthbert.
It's time for bed.
Good night, Mr. Cuthbert.
Good night, Anne.
I look forward to seeing your smiling face in the morning.
I wouldn't give a dog to that Blewett woman, let alone a child like that.
I don't fancy Mrs. Peter Blewett's style either, but it's that or keep the child ourselves. I know that's what you want, and I've been thinking over the idea. I dare say I'd make a terrible mess of bringing up a child, especially a girl.
Well now, I reckon you'd come to see that we should keep her. She's such an interesting little thing.
I have not said we'll keep her, and it's more to the point to say she's a useful little thing.
She's done fine by the dishes.
She'd have to be trained to everything, and there'd be no interfering from you. An old maid doesn't know much about bringing up a child, but I guess she knows more than an old bachelor.
You can have your way, Marilla. Only be as good to her as you can without spoiling her. I kind of think she's the sort you can do anything with, if you only get her to love you.
Who'd have ever thought you'd be talking like that? Little girls have been your mortal fear since you were 5 years old.
Well now, I don't know that it's since I was 5. And this one's different.
We'll both be in for it if we do this.
We will.
I have not agreed to keep her.
I know.
Have you said your prayers, Anne?
I never say any prayers.
Don't you know it's terrible wicked not to say your prayers every night?
Mrs. Thomas told me that God made my hair red on purpose, and I haven't cared about him since.
While you're under my roof, you must say your prayers.
Why, of course, if you want me to, but you'll have to tell me what to say.
You must kneel down.
Why must people kneel to pray? If I really wanted to pray, I'd go out into a great big field all alone, and I'd look up into the sky, that lovely blue sky that looks as if there's no end to its blueness, and I'd just feel a prayer. Well, what am I to say?
Most children start with, "Now I lay me down to sleep." But I think you're old enough to pray for yourself. Just thank God for your blessings and ask him humbly for the things you want.
I'll do my best. Gracious Heavenly Father, I thank thee for the trees with their lovely blossoms, and the woods and the flowers and the lake of the shining waters. That's what I've decided to call that beautiful pond down by the berries. I'm extremely grateful for them. That's all the blessings I can think of just now. As for the things I want, they're so numerous that it would take a great deal of time to name them all, so I will only mention the two most important. Please let me stay at Green Gables, and please let me be good looking when I grow up. I remain, yours respectfully, Anne Shirley. There. Did I do all right? I could have made it much more flowery if I had a little more time to think it over. Oh, I should have said amen instead of yours respectfully. Do you suppose it will make any difference?
I don't suppose it will. Go to sleep now like a good child. Good night.
Miss Cuthbert, if you do allow me to stay, might I call you Aunt Marilla? I've never had an aunt or any relation, and it would make me feel as if I really belonged to you.
I'm not your aunt.
We could imagine you were.
When the Lord put us into circumstances, he doesn't mean for us to imagine them away.
I don't know what I would have done all my life if I couldn't have imagined myself away from circumstances.
Go to sleep now.
Miss Cuthbert, won't you please tell me if you're going to send me away or not?
If I tell you we're going to send you away, you won't sleep for crying and being in the depths of despair. If I tell you we're going to keep you, you won't sleep from excitement. A night of sleep's too important to be lost, especially for a child. I'll tell you in the morning.
But, Miss Cuthbert, if you don't tell me, I shan't sleep one wink. I'll spend the entire night imagining the life that may lie before me. If I'm to be sent away, I'll sleep to gather strength to face Mrs. Blewett. If I'm to stay, I'll sleep to thank you for your generosity. So, can't you please tell me?
Well, I suppose I might as well. You are next door to a perfect heathen, Anne. There are so many things you need to be taught. If you stayed, I should have my hands full. I've had a pretty easy life so far, but I suppose we can't get through this world without our share of troubles. Matthew and I have decided to keep you. That is, if you will try to be a good girl. Why, child? Whatever is the matter?
I'm crying, but I can't think why. I'm glad as I can be. I'll try to be so good, Miss Cuthbert, I promise you, but it will be uphill work, I expect, for Mrs. Thomas told me I was desperately wicked.
You are not wicked, child, but I'm afraid you cry and laugh far too easily.
I'll do my best, Miss Cuthbert, my very best.
And we will try to do right by you. Good night now.
Miss Cuthbert, since I can't call you Aunt Marilla, what am I to call you?
You may call me just plain Marilla.
Won't that sound awfully disrespectful?
If you're careful and speak respectfully, you'll sound just fine.
Good night, Marilla.
Good night.
Marilla, I can say good night tonight with a clear conscience.
Good night, Anne.
Good night.
And the cutest by far of all the boys is Gilbert Blythe. He's always playing tricks and teasing all the girls.
I'm glad he won't be at school.
Not till his uncle's better anyway.
Miss Barry.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Phillips.
It would have been a much better morning if you had been punctual, Diana Barry. The first day of school is hardly a day for tardiness.
I'm sorry, Mr. Phillips.
You've been a model student, Diana. I assume this morning's behavior is attributed to circumstances beyond your control, and I shan't hold it against you. You will find your textbook on your desk and this morning's assignment on the board. I suggest you begin work immediately.
Yes, Mr. Phillips. Come on, Anne.
I would like to speak with this young lady alone for a moment.
This is Anne Shirley, Mr. Phillips.
I'm well aware of who she is, Diana. You may go in.
Yes, Mr. Phillips.
I'm an understanding and compassionate man, Miss Shirley. But the world is neither understanding nor compassionate. It asks only, can you do the job? This morning you have failed to do just that, my girl. Your lateness has started you off with a black mark. I want no repetition of this. Our scholars are not to be led by your arrogant ways.
Diana and I came as fast as we could, Mr. Phillips. We were both just so...
Excuses undo nothing. I understand that you have been taught no discipline, that you have led a fragmented life and have not had to bind yourself to the grindstone.
I know what it is to work hard, Mr. Phillips.
You shall know what it is, my girl, and if you thrive on it, we will get along famously. I do not expect you to be a scholar, Miss Shirley. All I expect of a girl of your background is that you behave well.
But you see, Mr. Phillips, that's just it. I'll read and write all you want, but as for behavior, well, I'll try, but...
You shall do better than merely trying, Miss Shirley, or both of us shall wish for you to return to that pathetic institution from whence you came.
Gilbert, what did you do to Ruby?
I pinned her hair on the back of her chair.
You didn't.
Did you hear her scream? I bet she thought her hair was being yanked out by the roots.
You shouldn't do such things, Gilbert Blythe.
I wouldn't to someone like you, Diana.
Oh, yes.
But to a prissy thing like Ruby Gillis, her hair's as yellow as straw. She reminds me of a scarecrow, except she cries all the time.
Mr. Blythe, I would like to speak with you for a moment, if you please.
Yes, sir?
No, not in there. Let the silly creatures vent their immature energy. It's very good to have you back, my boy, as I expected. Missing the first month of school hasn't hurt you one bit. Is your uncle a new brunch book all right now?
Yes, sir, thank you.
It's really as if you haven't been gone. You'll move right to the head of the class.
I still have plenty of work to do, Mr. Phillips. The new girl seems quite intelligent.
Ah, yes, you're finally going to have to run for that top scholar prize.
I'll welcome the competition, sir.
Oh, Anne, I thought I was going to burst. Did you see the look on Ruby's face when she screamed? Gilbert's the only one who could think up of something like that and get away with it. Mr. Phillips had no idea. Anne,
Just a minute.
he's awfully handsome, isn't he?
Who?
Gilbert Blythe, of course.
Yes, he's handsome, but he's far too bold. It isn't good manners to wink at a strange girl.
He winked at you?
Just after he pulled the pin out of Ruby's hair. He knew I saw him and he was just showing off, but I just turned away.
That must have been a shock for him, a girl turning away.
It's his name that's written up on the porch wall with Julia Bell's, isn't it?
With the big take notice heart over it.
Who's your new friend, Diana?
This is Anne Shirley Guild. Anne spelled with elegant way, with an E.
Well, how do you do, Miss Elegant Anne Shirley spelled with an E? Why is she taking no notice of me?
She took notice of her writing on the porch.
The lovely Julia Bell. Yes, she and I are inextricably bound together. I learned my multiplication tables by counting the freckles on her face.
That's very cruel, and so is what you did to Ruby Gillis.
Yes, I can see why you wouldn't appreciate jokes about hair and freckles.
Charlie's alone. Is Dad gone on Anne, you know?
I hate Charlie Sloane.
Jan Andrews told me that Charlie Sloane telling Ruby Gillis that Anne had a very pretty nose.
Charlie Sloane is one of the least perceptive people in Avonlea, but in this case, I must say, I agree. She does have a lovely nose, if it weren't so stuck up in the air. Watch out you don't bruise that lovely nose from pressing it too hard on the grindstone, though I suppose grinding your nose into that slate is your only choice if you're going to try to match me, particularly with hair like this. Carrots is what I'll call it.
Gil!
Look, everybody! Carrots! Carrots! Carrots!
You mean, hateful boy!
Anne!
Anne Shirley, what is the meaning of this? Answer me.
It wasn't her fault, Mr. Phillips.
Whose fault was it?
It was mine, sir. I teased her.
Teasing does not warrant violence. I'm appalled to see a student of mine displaying such a vindictive spirit. You shall write 100 times Anne Shirley has a very bad temper. Anne Shirley must learn to control her temper. You'll learn this is not the way that Avonlea children behave, Anne Shirley. Now come in and begin immediately.
We'd better go before he gets madder.
Go on, Gil.
I'm awful sorry, Anne. Honest, I am.
I shall never forgive Gilbert Blythe. The iron has entered my soul.
He makes fun of all the girls, Anne, and I've never heard him apologize for it once. He teases me about my hair. It's so black, he calls me Crow a dozen times.
There's a great deal of difference between being called a crow and being called Carrots. He's hurt my feelings excruciatingly.
I instructed you to begin immediately, Anne Shirley. You're not in a situation where you can do as you please any longer.
I was a model pupil at the orphanage, Mr. Phillips, but then there were no children there as rude as Gilbert Blythe.
You could learn a great deal from Gilbert Blythe, and in fact, you shall. From now on, you shall sit next to Gilbert. Perhaps that'll teach you to moderate your temper and your pride.
Supper's ready. All right. How did you make out with your work today?
Fine.
Getting it all done just the way Mr. Phillips likes it?
The schoolwork is fine.
What's the matter, Anne?
Nothing.
Then I guess you won't need cheering up by what's happening on Saturday. When Mrs. Barry and I go to the market, we have arranged for Diana to come over for tea.
Oh, Marilla, thank you, thank you. Do you know what Marilla said we could have for tea? Fruitcake, cherry preserves, and raspberry cordial.
I love raspberry cordial.
Well then, my dear, may I serve you a glass?
I'd be ever so grateful.
I shall bring it directly. Marilla said it was right here.
Did you know Charlie Sloane's name was written with M. Whites on the porch wall? She's real mad about it.
Here it is, I believe.
And Gilbert Blythe did the most awful thing to Tilly Boulter yesterday.
Please, Diana.
You're really being silly, Anne.
I shall never forgive Gilbert Blythe.
He's truly sorry.
Let's not spoil our afternoon together.
All right.
I'll get the tea.
This is awfully nice raspberry cordial, Anne.
I'm real glad you like it. Take as much as you want.
The nicest I ever drank. This raspberry cordial is ever so much nicer than Miss Lynde's, although she brags of hers ever so much. It doesn't taste a bit like Miss Lynde's.
I should think Marilla's would probably be much nicer than Mrs. Lynde's. Marilla is a famous cook. Will you have some more?
Thank you.
Marilla's trying to teach me to cook, but it's uphill work. There's so little scope for the imagination in cookery. You have to go by the rules. The last time I made a cake, I forgot to put the flour in, but it was because I was imagining a lovely story about you and me. You had the smallpox and I was nursing you back to health. The cake was a dismal failure. Flour is so essential to cakes, you know. Marilla was very cross, and I don't blame her. I am a trial to her. Last week, Marilla made a pudding sauce to serve to Mr. and Mrs. Chester Ross. She told me to put it on the shelf and cover it, but when I was carrying it, I was imagining I was a nun taking the veil to bury a broken heart, and I forgot about covering the sauce. When I finally remembered to cover it, I found a mouse drowned in it. I took the mouse out, of course, but Marilla was milking at the time, and I forgot to tell her until I saw her carrying the sauce to the table. I screamed, "Marilla, you mustn't use that pudding sauce. There was a mouse drowned in it, and I forgot to tell you." Marilla and Matthew and Mr. and Mrs. Ross all just stared at me.
I don't feel so well. I need to go home.
Oh, you mustn't dream of going home. You haven't had your tea.
I've got to go home.
What about your cake and preserves? Lie down for a little and you'll feel better. Where do you feel bad?
I'm awfully sick.
Oh, Diana, do you suppose you really are taking on the smallpox? If you are, I'll never forsake you, but I do wish you'd stay till after tea.
I'm dizzy.
Diana!
Diana!
What is going on, Anne?
Diana's sick, Marilla. We were having a lovely tea when suddenly she became terribly ill.
She's not ill. She's drunk. Drunk? How did this happen, Diana?
All she'd had is that raspberry cordial, Mrs. Barry. Diana thought it was lovely, better than Mrs. Lynde's. She had 2 glasses.
3.
This isn't raspberry cordial, Anne.
I got it from the cabinet, just like you said.
This is currant wine. You awful girl. You've given my Diana wine?
But I didn't mean to. I thought it was raspberry cordial. Oh, Diana, I'm so sorry.
You stay away from her. You've done enough damage.
It's not her fault. I told her the bottle was in the cabinet when I forgot I moved it down to the cellar.
A proper household wouldn't have wine in the first place.
And a proper child wouldn't drink 3 tumblerfuls at a time of anything.
You're not coming back to this house, Diana.
Don't say that, Mrs. Barry.
You're a thoroughly wicked little girl, and Diana shall never play with you again.
Oh, please forgive me, Mrs. Barry. I didn't mean to intoxicate Diana. I would never do that.
I won't have your orphan ways ruining my child.
There, child. Don't cry. You weren't to blame.
I am to blame. I'm always causing trouble, and I shall never see Diana again.
Don't be foolish. Mrs. Barry's just upset. She'll think better of it tomorrow.
She won't. Diana is the only person in the world who might have possibly ever liked me, and now she's gone. My whole life's ruined. I'm ugly and stupid and an orphan, and nothing will ever be right. I should just run away so I'm all alone like I deserve.
You're not ugly and you're not stupid. But if when things go wrong, you cry or get angry or go off into your imagination because you're afraid you really don't deserve anything good, then nothing good will happen to you, and you'll end up alone.
My mother has said I'm not to talk with you, Anne. She says you're not fit company and I'm not to associate with you.
Oh, Diana.
I know, it's awful.
Won't she relent?
I cried and told her it wasn't your fault, but she won't be swayed. I'm never to play with you again. But Anne, she can't stop us from thinking of one another. We shall still be near each other in the classroom whenever we want. We can look at each other with a special look and imagine ourselves off in the woods on a grand adventure.
You really do care for me. Nobody ever has since I can remember.
I'm devoted to you, Anne.
Fare thee well, my bosom friend. Henceforth we must be as strangers, living side by side, but my heart will ever be faithful to thee.
Hello, Anne. I've wanted to tell you how sorry I was about what happened. I tried to apologize that day, but I know you were too upset to hear me. You're not still mad, are you?
I I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me alone, Gilbert.
Are you going to be mad at me for keeps? I promise I won't ever tease you about your hair again. I swear it.
I'd just like to be alone for a little.
You really are something, aren't you? A fella tries to be nice to you and you just cut him right off.
I'm just not concerned about what you have to say right now.
That's real friendly.
Well, we're not friends as far as I can tell.
Whoever said we were? You think you're so much better than everybody else. Lord knows why.
For your information, Gilbert Blythe, Mr. Phillips is so pleased with my work that he said he's hoping to see me reciting at the end of the term concert.
He did not.
He as much as said he expected me to win the top scholar prize if I set my mind to it.
Well, we'll just see about that.
Yes, we will, won't we?
I hope to be home by 9 as usual, but this may not be a usual meeting. We're going to be discussing the Blewett children, though I don't know there's anything the Church Aid Society can really do.
Replace the mother.
What are you working so hard on?
Geometry. I've got to improve.
I don't see how you can do better than you've been doing.
I have to if I'm going to recite at the end of the term concert.
Fiddlesticks. Your learning is your reward. You don't need to be showing off in public.
But I have hopes of making it my most glorious revenge.
Revenge isn't a fit thing for a little girl to be speaking of. I don't think you'll be going to any concert. Make sure you put out your candle tonight. I may be home late, and I don't want it burning down.
Well, now, that concert's almost a month away, isn't it? And who knows what can happen in a month's time.
Thank you, Matthew, but it's probably better that I not get my heart set on it. I'd look ridiculous standing before an audience reciting. I hardly have the appearance of a dignified public figure. I probably won't be selected in any case with all this geometry. Did you ever study geometry when you went to school?
Well, no, I didn't.
I wish you had, because then you'd be able to sympathize with me. It's casting a cloud over my whole life.
Oh, and Minnie May is awful sick. She's got the croup. And Father and Mother went to the Church Aid and there's nobody to go to the doctor. And I don't know what to do. I'm so scared.
Don't worry, Diana.
She's so bad, Anne. It's like she can't breathe. It came on her all of a sudden.
Matthew's going for the doctor, Diana. I know exactly what to do for croup. When you look after 3 sets of twins, you get lots of experience. Bringing a child out in the air would be awful for pneumonia, but it sometimes helps croup. You've had her out in the air and Minnie May's still coughing. She's got a bad case, but we'll just get this ipecac down her.
She's going to die.
Hush, Diana.
I know she is.
Get that cloth and wipe her forehead.
I can't.
Diana.
I can't.
Diana! Get the cloth. Now, come wipe her forehead. You see, you're helping her. You've got to take this, Minnie May. It's magic elixir. It comes from the fairies. They make it from the most beautiful flowers in the world, and they only let children drink it when they really need it.
Sorry it took so long. Had to go all the way to Spencerville.
I was awfully near giving up in despair, Doctor. She got worse and worse, sicker than ever the Hammond twins did. I gave her every drop of ipecac in that bottle, and when the last drop went down, I said to myself, I didn't want to worry you, Diana, but I had to relieve my feelings. This is the last lingering hope, and I fear it is a vain one. But in about 3 minutes, she coughed up the phlegm and fell asleep.
My baby, my Minnie May. Is she going to be all right, Doctor? Is she going to be all right?
I expect she is.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Don't thank me. Thank that little redheaded girl. She's the one that saved your baby's life. Never seen such skill and presence of mind in a child that age. I'll write you a prescription for some syrup.
Oh, I don't know how I'm going to keep my eyes open at school tomorrow.
Don't you worry about school. You just sleep in.
I can't. I'll fall behind.
You go to bed and have a good sleep. I'll do your chores. Tomorrow.
Good night.
Anne, thank you, and I hope you'll forgive me for misjudging you.
I have no hard feelings, Mrs. Barry. I assure you I didn't mean to intoxicate Diana, and henceforth I shall cover the past with a mantle of oblivion.
Yes, well, when you're rested, I would like for you to come over and play with Diana.
Oh, Mrs. Barry!
Why, Matthew Cuthbert, what in the world are you doing here?
Well, now, that's a good question.
Has Marilla sent you, Matthew?
Well, no, actually, I don't believe she has. You see, you know how Anne saved little Minnie Wave? Well, I was thinking she deserved something for that. You know, like a reward. And, well, I've been watching Anne, you see.
Yes.
Well, now, I was thinking that it's only a few weeks to the end of the term, and there'll be that concert and all, and Anne might just be asked to recite. And if she was going to be up there in front of all those people, well, she ought to look like a dignified public figure.
You want me to make her a new dress?
Well, now, I'll pay you for it. Pay you whatever you think's fair.
I'd be glad to make the dress, Matthew. If Marilla made it, well, Anne would probably get wind of it, and your surprise would be spoiled.
Well, now, I'm much obliged. Much obliged.
I'll bring it to you without Anne or Marilla knowing a thing.
Well, now, that's just fine.
Is there something else, Matthew?
Well, now, I don't know, but, don't they make them sleeves different nowadays from what they used to? Sort of like you know.
I'm not sure I do.
Well, like this.
Why, Matthew Cuthbert, thinking about dresses and looking through ladies' magazines, my word. Anne's dress will have puffed sleeves so big, Marilla will be stunned into silence, and it will be our little secret.
This is ever so much fun, isn't it, Anne?
Yes, but I do wish I knew how to swim.
This tub may be as old as the dawn, but I don't think it's in danger of sinking just yet.
There's an awful lot of water seeping in. Oh, it's cold.
Yes, a body wouldn't last 5 minutes in the water. Not quite the ideal for a picnic, but end of term deserves some kind of celebration.
1 more week.
Yes, and you'll know on Friday whether you've beaten Gilbert or not. If you win top scholar, will you forgive him?
I don't want to discuss it.
Think how you felt when my mother wouldn't forgive you.
I don't care how he feels.
You expect everyone to care about how you feel.
Oh, we're in luck. Hot cocoa and Marilla's special muffins.
He's apologized. He's never teased you ever again. In fact, he's been overly nice to you. What does he have to do, Anne?
He's just so arrogant.
He's sure of himself. That's all. No reason he shouldn't be. He's always been top.
Well, he won't be this year. I've mastered geometry and all that's left is the recitation. I'm going to make sure mine is so powerful that no one will have any doubt who is the winner. I'm going to recite the Lady of Shalott.
Oh, that's so romantic. Floating down the river to Camelot, drawn by Lancelot from her seclusion to her death. You'll be wonderful, Anne.
I shall be more than wonderful. I shall become the Lady of Shalott. When I finish, everyone will have seen that awful combination of death and beauty reflected right on my face.
Oh, that's ghastly. How will you do it?
I shall experience her pain firsthand. Come on.
What are you going to do?
Down she came and found a boat,
Anne!
beneath a willow left afloat, and round about the prow she wrote,
The Lady of Shalott.
Well, push me off.
Into the river?
Yes.
No!
Diana, I've got to float down the river, singing my mournful, holy song.
And dying?
All right, I'll push myself off. I thought as my bosom friend you'd want to be a part of this. This is entering the world of Camelot, of Lancelot, of...
The Lady of Shalott.
Yes.
All right, lie back down. Lying robed in snowy white that loosely flew to left and right, the leaves upon her falling light through the noises of the night.
What are you doing, Diana? Oh, my heart! My heart! I should have known this was some sick trick of yours, Aunt Shirley. I came the back way purposefully not to meet you, and of course, here you are.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Lynde. We weren't trying to scare you.
You scared us just as much as we scared you.
I suppose I did. Well, my feet are on the ground, not under it, so I suppose there's no damage done, thank goodness.
Why didn't you want to meet me, Mrs. Lynde?
Oh, never you mind. Go on back to your silly game. But mind you, don't scare anyone else.
She didn't want me to see what she had in that bundle. It's connected with the concert. I can feel it. It's an omen, Diana.
A bad omen? You shouldn't go on the boat, Anne. We're so deep here in the currents.
Come on, push me off.
And I really think...
And as the boat head wound along the willowy hills and fields among, they heard her singing her last song. Diana!
All right. The Lady of Shalott.
Heard a carol mournful, holy, chanted loudly, chanted lowly, till her blood was frozen slowly, and her eyes were dark and holy. Diana!
What?
It's leaking! The water's flooding in!
Row to shore, Anne, quick, row!
The paddle's over there.
Oh no!
I'm sinking. Run for help, Diana, run!
Don't get in the water, you'll freeze.
For ere she reached upon the tide, the first house by the waterside, singing in her song she cried, the Lady of Shalott. Under tower and balcony, by garden wall and gallery, a gleaming shape she floated by, dead pale between the houses high, silent into Camelot. Out upon the wharfs they came, knight and burgher, lord and dame, and round the prow they read her name, the Lady of Shalott. Who is this? And what is here?
And in the lighted palace near died the sound of world cheer, and they crossed themselves for fear, all the knights at Camelot. But Lancelot mused a little space. He said, she has a lovely face. God in his mercy lend her grace, the Lady of Shalott. What were you doing?
I was in the Barry's boat and it sprang a leak. Diana went for help. Could you take me to shore? I'm very much obliged to you.
Anne, look here. It's been such a long time. It was only a stupid joke I made. And besides, I think your hair is awfully pretty now. Awfully pretty. Honest, I do. I swear I won't call you carrots ever again, and I'll come save you whenever you need. I'll be your Lancelot, my romantic Lady of Shalott.
I shall never be friends with you, Gilbert Blythe.
All right, then. And I'll never ask you again, Aunt Shirley. And I don't care either. You're the one who should have been apologizing to me.
Oh, Anne. Anne, I thought you were drowned. I felt like a murderer because I pushed you off. I was in hysterics.
You're all right?
Yes, Matthew. I'm sorry I frightened you.
How did you escape?
Gilbert Blythe came along in a dory and brought me to land.
Oh, Anne, how splendid of him. How romantic.
It was not romantic. I don't ever want to hear the word romantic again.
Well, at least you'll be speaking to him now.
I won't. Not ever.
He saved your life, Anne.
He only wanted to mock me.
You're impossible. When you've done something wrong, everyone's expected to say it's all right. But when someone's done something to you, there's no way to make up for it. How can anyone be friends with you?
Diana? Well, it's too bad for her if she doesn't want to be my friend. I don't need her anyway.
I guess you don't need anybody. I guess maybe you just need to be all on your own.
They all wish I didn't exist. And they're right.
Are you all right?
I suppose.
You're not mad at her for almost drowning, are you?
No!
What's wrong, Matthew?
You spent the last 40 years minding your own business, Marilla. I don't think you need to change now.
You best get out of those wet things. Matthew said the Blythe boy saved you. He's a nice-looking fellow. Reminds me of his father. We used to be real good friends, his father and I. People even called him my beau. But we had a quarrel, and I wouldn't forgive him for what he asked. I meant to after a while, but I was sulky and angry, and I wanted to punish him. He never came back, and I always felt rather sorry. Wished I'd forgiven him when I had the chance. I'll make some tea to warm you up.
Hello, Mr. Cuthbert, Mrs. Cuthbert. This is Gilbert Blythe.
How do you do?
And I won't let your stubbornness ruin our friendship and the friendship you should have with Gil.
I can't always do what everyone else does, Diana. I'm not like you and Gil. I say and think wild, embarrassing things. I have fits of temper. I'm incorrigible.
You're not so different from us, Anne. A lot of people would say I'm just incorrigible as you. I think it's a compliment to both of us. We always make things exciting. I'm looking forward to standing beside you at the concert no matter who wins.
Thank you, Gil.
Are we going to be friends now?
You've always treated me like a friend. I've just been too foolish to realize it.
I'm so glad we come.
I shall never forget you, Diana. Never.
Anne.
I think we're all a bit frayed from the excitement. Thank you for coming over.
Good night. See you tomorrow, Anne.
Good night.
Good night.
I was going to leave a letter for you, but that wouldn't be fair. I've got to face up to it. You've done everything you could for me, but I've been nothing but a burden to you.
No, Anne.
You're the gentlest soul alive, Matthew. I don't want to bring you any more pain. I couldn't bear to see you look like you did this afternoon, and I know I would. I know I would hurt you again. It's better if I go.
No.
I don't belong here.
Why?
Because I don't.
Because you're ugly and have red hair? Because the devil's in you? Because you're an orphan?
Yes.
When I was young, I was always being teased about my looks. I didn't like myself much, was sure I was ugly. So I tried to imagine that ugliness away. I didn't do it like you, all romance and fantasy and show. I turned to work, tried to put people out of my life, until you came. You're part of this family, Anne.
I don't deserve this.
You do. You deserve everything. You're smart and pretty and loving too, which is better than all the rest. You've been a blessing to us, and there never was a luckier mistake than what Miss Blewett made.
If I'd been the boy you sent for, I could have helped you so much more.
I'd rather have you than a dozen boys. You mind that, Anne. Rather than a dozen boys, you're my girl.
And mine. It's never been easy for me to say things out of my heart, but I love you as dear as you are my own flesh and blood. I need you here, Anne.
And everyone's gonna know how good you are.
Look at those sleeves! Look at those sleeves! I'm gonna make you so proud. So very proud.